In March of 2025, we're going to have two eclipses. The first one is on March 14th. That's the one I'm going to cover in this video. The other one is a solar eclipse that I'll be covering in another video, and that's on March 29th. So this first one is on March 14th, 2025 at 6:58:46. That's UK time. Okay. So lunar eclipses are always happening at the full moon. And the full moon gives the fruits. It says, okay, this is how it is. This is your reward. This is what you've gotten. This is how life has worked out. Okay. And there's always an element where we just have to accept and say, okay, I've worked, I've grown, I've moved towards something. And the eclipse is showing me the long-term results of that. Okay. We have full moons every month. But eclipses happen every 6 months, and every eclipse follows a cycle of eclipses that's 18 years long. So when we deal with an eclipse full moon, we're looking at a very long-term period. We're looking at a long-term period of 18 years, okay? So 18 years ago, which would have been 2027, there would have been a reoccurring theme to this eclipse. Essentially, this eclipse will have some element of a reoccurring theme to the previous eclipse, because the eclipse runs in these 18-year cycles. So over the last 18 years, you've been plugging along, you've been working, whatever it is, the house and planet that this eclipse is falling in, and now you're getting the fruits of it. You get to see the reality check of this is how it's really working. This is how my efforts and my beliefs and my struggles and my growth, this is where it's brought me. So one way you always want to look at this full moon eclipse is as an honest assessment of your life, and really an honest assessment of you. Because, we are the sun, and the moon is the reflection of the sun. And so what condition your life is in right now, it's a reflection of you. Okay. If you don't like something in it, well, how do you change your reflection? You change yourself, right? If you don't like something when you look in the mirror, you don't put a sweater on the mirror, you put a sweater on you if you want to look different. Okay. So eclipses, for these full moon eclipses, give us a time to kind of look at our lives and say, okay, this is where I've arrived based on me, my actions, what I believe, what I think. And if there's anything you don't like in your life, the world's going to show you that in the deficits in your life, meaning the things that you're not feeling happy or fulfilled with. All right. This is why eclipses are sometimes hard, because we get the harsh realities of the path we've been on, the journey we've been walking. And if we've been walking a journey that's, not really on track, then yeah, eclipses can be brutal. Okay. Now, the condition of the planet that the moon is falling on when you're getting eclipse, or if it's falling on the house cusp, the condition of its lord is going to have a lot to say with how well you've been managing that area of your life. But all you have to do is just reflect and say, okay, yeah, this is how my life is. And what don't I like about it? Okay, this is a reflection of me. I have to work on myself. If I want these things, if I don't have enough money, what does that say about me? It means I've got poverty consciousness. If I don't have enough love, okay, there's a poverty consciousness in my love, in love, in my mind. There's these ideas that are creating this reality. Okay? Now, eclipses run in cycles. The previous one happened 18 years ago. There might be a similar theme going on during this time. I find quite often I have very, very similar themes happening during eclipses. And so you can look back to the previous time this eclipse happened, which was back in the March of 2007. Okay, and reflect back to that time. Now, the eclipse window starts at the previous new moon for the the previous full moon of this, before this full moon. And that was around the 12th of February, which was yesterday. So we just stepped into this eclipse window right now. And the eclipse window is about a 2-month long period. So it's during these 2 months that we especially will feel the effects of this eclipse. Now, eclipses are having a game plan. They have a very long-term game plan, and they run in cycles that run well over 1,000 years long. So to see what this eclipse has in store, we have to first look at the original eclipse in this cycle. And with the Kala software, I can do that very easily by, up here where you see the square box, this is the lunar eclipse that's happening on March 14th. I want to look at the original eclipse in this cycle, the first one. Oh, and you notice how close the moon is to K2 here? It is just about 3.5 degrees. That's very close. This is a more full, longer lasting eclipse as a result. The closer the moon is to the node, the more the eclipse effect is. Okay. Now in the original cycle, this is the cycle. There's 72 in total. This is the first one of those 72. In the original cycle, in the original eclipse, the moon was over here in tropical Aquarius. And it's a very simple eclipse chart, which is kind of nice. That means this isn't going to be the most complex, confusing eclipse of all. Okay. It's going to be really pretty much as simple as eclipses can be. Okay. Now in this chart, you can see how far the moon is from K2. In the original eclipse, in the first one, the eclipse is a very small eclipse. It's just a little partial eclipse. And then the eclipse builds up and gets closer and closer and closer and closer and closer over a period of well over 500 years until it's a very tight eclipse. And then the eclipse gets further and further, becomes less and less and less as it gets further and further, as the moon gets further from the node. Okay. As I showed you, the eclipse one right now is a very powerful one with it only 3 degrees away. All right. Here we can see it's 16 degrees away from K2. It's just barely getting eclipsed. But still, it's that first beginning chart that gently sets the seed of this eclipse cycle. Now, in this chart, there's really only 2 really strong influences to the moon. We have Saturn is aspecting the moon. Okay. It's a very strong aspect in Vedic astrology and what would be called a square in Western, but a very strong aspect in Vedic. That's really the strongest influence going to the moon. Then we have Pluto, you'll see over here is at 28 degrees of Pisces with the moon at 28 degrees of Aquarius. So they're exactly 30 degrees apart. That's called a semi-sextile. And when it comes to outer planets, yeah, semi-sextiles have an influence. Okay. So we basically have a Pluto and a Saturn influencing the moon as the dominant features. But what's nice is there's no planets with the moon. There's no planets with the sun. And, one I want to mention, we're only looking at the outer circle in this chart. That's the eclipse chart. This inner circle is just some random fellow that was opened up on my chart, namely Donald Trump, who I just opened the eclipse around. But we're going to ignore that. We don't care about that. We just want to look at where this eclipse is relevant to you. So it's basically a Pluto-Saturn eclipse, but it's simple because there's no planets with the moon. There's no planets with the sun. So this is one of the least confusing eclipse cycles that we're going to experience, okay? That's a good thing. Things will be much more clear, and clarity helps us get the message and figure out what's going on. Now, what the message is first of all that, as this eclipse happens and hits us in the future, there's going to be an element of just surrendering and acceptance. It's really an eclipse of acceptance that should teach a person to simply accept how things have landed, accept what the reward is. What's that full moon giving? What level of fulfillment is it giving? Just accept that. It's very much an eclipse of providing acceptance. The better your Jupiter in your chart, the easier this eclipse is going to be on you because it's just going to let you surrender and accept the reality. Okay? Now, what this eclipse is doing here, like I said, it's simple. There's only 2 planets influencing the eclipse moon strongly, but both those planets are, somewhat difficult planets. So Saturn aspecting the moon is going to make this eclipse cycle one of really showing a person their shortcomings and the level of fulfillment and the fulfillment that they've had. This eclipse is really here to say, all right, this is where you're not getting something. This is where you're just got cause for chronic depression, which means it's just not coming together. You just haven't been able to get this fulfillment. Saturn's a planet of denial. Okay. And he's denying some fulfillment of this eclipse. And so it's very much, I consider it a bit of a difficult eclipse. I don't consider this a nice eclipse. I consider this a depressing eclipse because it's here to say, this is how you're not getting fulfilled. This is what you're not getting. All right. So any planet that's getting hit or any house that's getting hit by this eclipse, you can expect to have some lack there. Like you want more, but you're just not getting as much. There's a limitation to how much you're getting. So this is an eclipse that's essentially here to show us our limitations. But it's a full moon eclipse, and we need to reflect on that and say, okay, what is it I'm not getting? Okay? Where's my life lacking? Keyword for Saturn is lack. And how can I see that in myself? Again, remember, what's happening during lunar eclipse time is a reflection of what's happening inside of yourself. Try to see how these lacks that you're experiencing in your life are ways in which you're treating yourself with lack, or you have an attitude of lack. If we had an attitude of lack about something, then we also are treating ourselves that way. So let's say a person has a poverty consciousness. Okay. So they have concerns about money and they don't feel like they're going to have enough money and there's not enough money in the world. So they have to get the money they can. Well, that reflects a poverty conscious towards themselves, that they feel a lack of self-worth and a lack of inherent value. And that's why they have the poverty consciousness. All right. So whatever it is that you're feeling a lack in, recognize that that lack is only going to be there if you are having some lack relationship within yourself, and try to reflect on that, because that's really what this eclipse is about. This eclipse is not about things working all of a sudden. Okay, this is an eclipse to show you where you're not working with yourself, and as a result, the world is not reflecting into your life some of the things you want based on where this planet is landing. Okay. And that's the gist of this eclipse. Simply put, it's a Saturnine eclipse. And so that means, yeah, we have to say, yeah, I've been limited in that. This is my shortcoming. If I want more, it's time for me to, let go of that shortcoming and embrace a different level of prosperity and treat myself in a better way. Okay. Pluto, like I said, is aspecting the moon. That's good. This gives the energy to change ourselves emotionally. So we're not just helpless sitting there with Saturn depressing us and things aren't going to work. Pluto's like, all right, I can change. I can change this reflection. I can change myself. So it is very much an eclipse of change. Okay. Where you can change the way you see yourself. All right. And that's the positive aspect of it, actually. Some of the nice things that are happening is we have a Mercury-Venus conjunction, which is fantastic. And it's an unblemished Mercury-Venus conjunction in this chart. It's not, it's not with any other planets. It's not with the sun. It's not with Saturn. It's a perfect Mercury-Venus. It's one of the super conjunctions. That means there's going to be friends and connection to support the people who get eclipsed. So this eclipse does bring friends and connections that can help deal with the eclipse. Okay. And the other favorable thing we've got that's really supporting here, let's see. Really, the main thing that's supporting this, other than that Mercury Venus, is that there's just not a lot of negativity going on in this eclipse. But what is predominantly there, that Saturn is an influence that does show us our limitations. So we have to approach the eclipse from this point of view. This is the purpose and goal of this eclipse. And every cycle, it's going to do it in a different way. Okay. And the other thing that's going on because of this strong Saturn influence, there's always something we're doing that makes us feel safe and like we're going to be okay, that we're going to have to stop doing during this eclipse. Okay, because Saturn is all about stop doing something. So there's something that, it might have been working, it might have felt good, it might have provided success, that we're just going to have to stop doing. Relevant to the house and planet that's getting hit if you're getting hit by this eclipse. All right. That thing is not necessarily going to be a difficult loss or a sacrifice. It's just going to be, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore kind of feeling. Okay. Now, let's go back to the current eclipse. In this current eclipse, like I said, it's happening over there in tropical Virgo. It's a very strong one because it's close to K2. We have a repetition of Saturn, where Saturn, instead of aspecting the moon from the fourth as a square, it's aspecting the moon from an angle, from the seventh house, from the moon, from the seventh. It's a very strong aspect, just a little, 1.5 degrees about. And that Saturn's with the sun, it's combust, which means that Saturn is having a very hard time letting go. Okay? And that's Saturn's job. Saturn's job is to help us let go. When Saturn is that close to Aries, where he's debilitated, and when Saturn is that combust, his energy to just let go of things and move on and feel okay is at a very high low. It's an all-time low, basically. And that's going to make this particular eclipse a harder one than normal in this cycle. And and because it's hard to let go, it might be felt as more depressing. All right. Still the same mission. The same mission as these are your limitations. The way to resolve them is to change who you are, not change the reflection, not the outside. The outside will be giving some lacks. And those things that are lacking, that aren't, that we want to have fulfill that hole that's just not being filled, it's going to be hard to let go of them because of that Saturn over there with the sun aspecting the moon. So anyone getting hit by this effort is going to have to make a huge effort to just let go and surrender and accept the reality and realize that holding on to those things isn't going to change anything. Those things that aren't working are not going to be changeable. You know how I always say, if you've got an eclipse with Saturn, Sun, Moon on angles from each other, then no, you can't fix anything right now. This isn't an eclipse for fixing things. Okay? It's an eclipse that's basically going to show us where we're not operating. And so the only solution is not to change the things. The only solution is to repair, fix, shift, transform the things inside of ourselves that are causing our problems. So that means, adjusting our attitude, getting more truthful ideas about things. If things aren't working, it's not because any of us haven't tried. We're trying all the time. Yet, when things don't work, it's because what we're trying doesn't work. Okay? So much energy is spent in life trying to do things in a way that they don't work. Until we finally feel it's hopeless, it'll never work. And yeah, true. If you keep doing it the way that has proven not to work, it'll never work. So there has to be found a better way. And part of this eclipse is about showing a person that, yeah, there's a better way. This way is not working. Let it go. You're not letting go of the need for fulfillment, but you're letting go of the thing that you're trying to fulfill yourself on that's not working. And more importantly, you're letting go of the manner in which you're trying to make something work that's not working. Okay? And if you really look at yourself during this eclipse and you say, okay, here I am hanging on to this thing. It's not really fulfilling me. It's depressing me. It's disappointing me. And I'm trying to make it work. Well, just stop a minute and go, okay, I'm trying to make it work because of what? And just do a reality check and write down what it is about that thing that's so great and what it is about that thing that's not working. And then ask yourself, why would I want this thing that's not working in this way. 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, whatever you wrote down. Whenever there's a Saturn that's having a hard time letting go, like this Saturn, we have to just really take a hard look at the things that aren't working and think to ourselves, would I really want that when it comes with this part? And if you really assess it, you'll go, hell no. But you might not feel like you're going to have a better chance or a better opportunity or another chance. Those are all lies. The reality is, if you look at something and it's not going to work the way it is, and it's gotten to a point where it's not fulfilling or it's ended and you can't let go of it, why would you want something? Why would you want to hold on to something that's not working? That's a mistake a troubled Saturn does. All right. So that's how you have to approach this eclipse. You have to approach it in the context of letting go, it's not working. There's going to be attachments that make it harder to let go of, which basically means there's going to be issues inside of us, anyone getting hit by this, that makes us want to hold on to something, even though it's not good for us, even though it's not working. The longer we hold on, the more depressing it's going to be. The sooner we just let it go, start getting more honest with ourselves and seeing what we really need and making sure we're behaving in a way to get that, which means that we are having the right attitude about ourselves to get that, then we'll be moving forward. The most basic, example of this is as people, we run around feeling unlovable, and then we complain about not getting love in the world. Well, it doesn't work that way. If we feel unlovable, we don't get love from the world. It's just, that's how it works. This is what I mean by looking at the reflection of what the world is showing us about ourselves. If we're not getting a type of love in the world, it's because we're simply not loving ourselves in that context, and we're expecting the world to do something. And it will, but it won't initiate it. It won't do it until we do it to ourselves. So whatever the world's not giving you, whatever it is that you're trying to hold on to and make work that's not working, whatever it is you can't just let go of and move past it, you need to realize that that situation is there because of the limitations we impose upon ourselves by not giving ourselves that. So whatever kind of love or whatever it is, the thing that you're not getting from the world during this eclipse, recognize that's happening because you're not giving that to yourself. Okay, you're expecting the world to give you something that you are not giving to yourself, and it doesn't work that way, unfortunately, okay? And so this is a very simple eclipse, and I don't have a whole lot to say other than that. It's simply a Saturnian eclipse. On this particular eclipse, some other things that are kind of critical. Okay, one nice thing I like here is we have Uranus aspecting the moon very strongly. They're like literally 4 minutes of arc apart from a perfect 120-degree aspect. So this particular eclipse, not the cycle, but this particular one is very, very much about Uranus. Okay? And that's good because Uranus is the planet that brings out what's more truthfully you. If we're not living truthfully as us, then life can't work. Uranus is the planet that helps us live as ourselves. When we live as ourselves, life works. Life doesn't live when we're living as anything but ourselves. That's why Krishna said we have to follow our swadharma, which is our own nature, which essentially means to live as ourselves. Uranus is the planet that helps us find what our swadharma is. And here during this eclipse, it's trining this moon, helping people become more who they are emotionally. Basically, to mature more into a healthier emotional being who's capable of feeling more okay about themselves. Okay? And that's what's going to make this particular eclipse a lot easier, is that there's a lot of room for a person to make the emotional shifts to be okay with themselves emotionally, basically. Uranus is always the planet that comes along and says, you can be okay with this part of you. And here it is aspecting the moon, saying, you can be okay with how you are emotionally. That's a very important step in the world giving us what we need emotionally. If we're not okay with parts of our emotional self, then there's no way we're going to let the world fulfill them. And then we'll walk around not feeling needy and unhappy. So Uranus is going to help us, become more truthful in, what our emotional needs really are, more open and honest with ourselves about what we really need, and escape a lot of the programming. Because see, what happens is we have needs from that moon that we walk around with, and need for connections, need for experiences, especially connective experiences that our moon has, that really is how we are. That's really aligned to who we are and how we truly function. Then we have all this programming that says, this is how it's supposed to be. This is how my relationship has to be. This is how, I have to feel about these things. We have all these limitations. Oh, especially like you've got Ketu in the fourth or a moon Ketu conjunction in your chart, then you're like, you're just got so many restrictions on what's permissible to feel and connect to. And Uranus come along is basically just saying, no, you can let more of what you're really feeling be true. And you can escape some of the programming. The ideas are saying, oh, that's not appropriate or accepting, or that's wrong, or mama won't love you, or daddy won't love you if you're like that, or whatever. Uranus hitting the moon helps free us up from those restrictive ideas that we might hold on to that are repressing us emotionally. So this is a really good eclipse for becoming more emotionally healthy, because we can start feeling a lot of things that we really haven't let ourselves feel, and that we haven't given ourselves, we haven't been okay enough with ourselves to feel or need. And once we become okay enough with ourselves to feel or need something, now we can get on the path of getting it. Now we actually are on the path of getting it. So while the Saturn makes it really hard, we've got these two opposing dynamics. Uranus and Saturn are the most opposite planets. Saturn is Saturn's the child of Uranus in Greek mythology. And Saturn took Uranus and threw him into the underworld. Which basically means, in order to stay alive and survive on this planet, we have repressed parts of who we really are. Okay, which is Uranus. And when Uranus hits a planet, there's parts of us that are really who we are coming back. Because of how we had to behave as children, what we had to do to appease mom and dad, essentially what the child mind, the baby, had to do to survive and feel like it was going to be okay and taken care of, we adopt all kinds of behaviors and ideas and nonsense to stay alive, which is Saturn. Saturn wants to stay alive. He's the mortal being. But we need to break free from all those games, all those ways of not being. And Uranus is what helps with that. So in this eclipse, Uranus is going to help you find out how you really feel about the things that the moon's hitting. This eclipse is landing on. You're going to get more truthful with how you really feel about things and what your needs really are with something. What makes you feel good about that thing that's getting eclipsed. At the same time, there's going to be the disappointment, the depression of, oh, I really wanted that to work and it's not working and I'm so sad, I'm so depressed. Well, it's not working because it doesn't reflect what your real needs are anyway. And as Uranus helps you get to terms with what you really need, it'll help you let go of the depression, the thing that you're holding on to that's not providing the fulfillment. Okay? So this is really completely an emotional eclipse is what it comes down to. It's a very, very emotional eclipse. We also have Neptune over there, kind of buried by Rahu up in the corner here. We have Neptune right there. aspecting the moon within a few degrees, within less than 6 degrees. So we also have Neptune involved. Well, good. I like Neptune because Neptune's all about potential. So say you're depressed right now because this eclipse and it's got a Saturn going on. And let's say you're super depressed. Well, it takes a lot of energy to be super depressed. Okay? And that energy is potential. That's all it is. Energy is simply potential. We know from physics that energy never disappears, it just changes form. That's why we have something called energy potential. Whatever energy we have, it has the potential to be redirected into a new form. And that's all potential is. It's taking energy and redirecting it. So say we get a teenager that's acting out and angry all the time, that kid has potential. All that energy, all that frustration, wow, if we can take that energy and redirect it, what amazing things can that teenager do? Okay? Neptune is the energy that is being transformed. It has the energy of potential. Neptune gets a bad rap because we have so many self-imposed limitations that oftentimes we miss the potential we're capable of achieving, And we only, and so we end up settling. But Neptune is all about potential. So this eclipse also brings into it a greater awareness of a person's emotional potential. And what that means is it helps us take whatever the feeling is that's unhappy, and it can allow that to be transformed into something more beautiful, which means it gives an opportunity to shift that energy into a new realm. So say you're depressed because your love life's not working. Okay, you take that energy and you shift it into painting, into writing, into adventure, into the life of your children, or who knows. You take all that energy and you shift it towards a more fulfilling place. Okay? And Neptune's going to help with that. It's going to help you take your energy potential, which means all the unhappy feelings, and transmute them into something else. Neptune's written on water, right? With that energy of Neptune, we can write any story we want. It's very fluid. It's energy waiting to be transformed. And that energy is waiting to be transformed into essentially what works for us better. So we have two strong outer influences, planets influencing this moon. So it's going to change where we're expecting our emotional needs to get met, which is the transmutation of the energy. It's going to change our mood, help us transform our mood, which means the energy that's hurting us, transform it to be an energy that makes us feel good. Okay? And it's about being more honest with how we really feel about things and what we really need. Because like I said, we're all walking around with a lot of crazy ideas of what we need to be happy. And a lot of those ideas aren't true. And this eclipse is about showing us which ideas, are more true that maybe we're not that aware of. Okay? So yeah, depressing for sure if it hits you, but between Neptune and Uranus, there's a tremendous amount of emotional changing going on here. And that shouldn't be that intense. Okay? I think the hardest thing is just going to be able to let go of that thing that you're holding on to that's not working to cause emotional fulfillment. You just need to let it go. And we can't let something go because we're waiting for the world to give us something we're not giving ourselves. So if we just say, okay, what is I'm not getting from this thing or that person? And then you just get up and start giving it to yourself, it'll be a lot easier to let that thing go. All right? Okay, so in 2 weeks, we're going to start the window of the solar eclipse. That eclipse has a completely different flavor to this lunar eclipse. So depending on what eclipse is affecting you, you'll have very different experiences, and you might be getting affected by both eclipses. So you'll just have to look and see. Um, but this is the one on the horizon, and I don't see this as a particularly destructive eclipse, luckily. Okay. But it is an eclipse of making a lot of emotional shifts and growth and letting goes. Okay. And these letting goes, most of them are going to be because you're sick and tired of what's not working. It's that kind of letting go, I think, is how it's going to be. All right. Thank you.